Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our second Renegade Health webinar. Today's topic is how to fast on your own. And we're going to be answering a lot of questions. We have Sarah Murray on the line, who works for Renegade Health as a webmaster and coordinator. And she's going to be taking your questions during the call, and we'll answer them at the end. Sarah?
Yep. Hi, everybody. At any time during the webinar today, you can send in your questions by typing in the lower right-hand message area, and I will see them, and we'll get to as many as possible at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Sarah. So let's get started. Just a second here. And we're ready to go to talk about fasting, because this is a topic that has always interested me for as long as I can remember being interested in natural health. And although we're going to talk specifically about how to fast on your own, fasting in general is going to be the topic for today. What are the benefits? What are some of the risks? What are the different types of fasts that you can do? Why fasting at all? Water fasting, juice fasting, what are some of the differences? We're going to cover some of it today. First, I want to say something that applies to some of you listening right now. So a quote from Dr. Alan Goldhammer from the True North Health Institute, a center in fasting, who says, people that are on medications or have significant health concerns should seek professional advice before initiating a water-only fasting program. There are safer modified fasting programs you can do at home on your own. Water fasting can get complicated quickly when unhealthy people attempt to undertake fasting without proper preparation. So does that mean nothing I say today will be relevant to you? No, you'll understand more about fasting. And also, we're not going to talk about undertaking a long water fast on your own. This is not what this webinar is about. We're going to talk about a short fast, but also about the benefits of a longer fast and what is the context for that kind of fasting program. First, I want to tell you a little bit about my fast. And as you know, I'm the editor of Renegade Health, and I've been very involved in the natural raw food movement for many years. But part of that also is a big interest in natural hygiene and fasting. In fact, this interest in fasting and natural hygiene dates back to an earlier time as my interest in raw food. So I started out with an interest in fasting, natural hygiene, and vegetarianism, and then got interested in raw foods and the other things. The first books that interested me, there's a little technical problem here. Okay. All right, so the two books that really got me motivated to learn more about fasting were The Science and Fine Art of Fasting by Dr. Herbert Shelton, and a book in French by Dr. Albert Mosseri from France, who wrote some of the best information I ever come across on fasting. And this is going to be part of our next program, The Greatest Cure on Earth, which will feature new versions of these books. So I have a few pictures here from different times when I fasted. A first 3 or 4 day fast, which I did on many occasions. And then I did 2 longer fasts, 5 and 7 days. And I also did a long 23-day fast on water. These are all water fasts that I did. And I also did juice fasting and other programs. And when you talk about fasting, the idea is not fasting as a lifestyle or trying to get as many fasts as possible, but it's understanding how fasting can help you. And that can apply to juice or water fasting. And I'm going to talk about specifically why in a moment that fasting can be beneficial to many of you in some way, shape, or form. So, why fasting? It makes sense if you think about it that the human being, the human body, was designed for intermittent periods of scarcity. This is how we evolved in a world of periodic scarcity, a famine. So our bodies, and I'll show you in a moment, evolved the capacity to fast. And that has some benefits because of these evolutionary changes that took place in the human body. We evolved to be able to fast, but we also benefit from fasting, a short or a long fast. In the context of a modern world, this balances out our artificial lifestyle of abundance. Always, we live in a world of abundance. So we grew up, or we evolved in a period where scarcity was present, food scarcity. And our bodies are used to that. And now we live in a world of absolute abundance. And that's going to affect how we age, our disease, our rates of diseases, and so on. So fasting enables us to get back in some way to a more natural, I wouldn't say way of life, but to a natural rhythm of intermittent periods of scarcity that we program ourselves now. We have to program them because we're not going to come across them very often. I'm going to show you a few papers that came up recently that you might have seen from medical news websites, Forbes magazine, other news outlets that are showing the results of new research on fasting. And we'll see how fasting for 3 days or longer, or a very restricted diet of 200 to 400 calories a day, can reset some components of your immune system. And that's very interesting and very powerful information. In research, fasting lowered white blood cell counts, which triggered the immune system to start producing new white blood cells. And I'll explain exactly why that is happening. Fasting, or what we call starvation, but it's not actually starvation, and we'll look at the difference, forces your body to recycle a lot of the immune cells that are not needed. And two of the key mechanisms are an enzyme called PKA and a hormone called IGF-1. IGF-1 is a growth hormone. We don't want too much of it in our body because it pushes everything to grow, including cancer cells and other things we don't want to grow. And that is reduced by fasting. Once you start eating again after a short fast or a long fast, your stem cells kick back into high gear to replenish the cells that were recycled during the fast. So this is the research, and I'm going to show you a few articles that came up recently that I find quite interesting because more and more research is coming up on fasting. In this article in Forbes magazine, a researcher was quoted as saying that fasting has the potential to delay aging and help prevent and treat diseases while minimizing the side effects caused by chronic dietary interventions. What Dr. Longo is saying here is that it's been observed in the research that what we call caloric restriction leads to benefits. But caloric restriction is very difficult to do. That's what he means by side effects. If you eat 500 calories fewer than you need in a day, you might live longer, but it's going to be very difficult to maintain that kind of deficit. Some people can do it, but it has side effects. And you can replace that and get some of the same benefits, in fact, most probably of the same benefits, by doing some form of intermittent fasting. In an article published in the Telegraph, a researcher in Germany was quoted as, let's go back, as saying that, take type 2 diabetes. This is a disease we know that we can cure through fasting, but there is an industry that sells all these drugs and devices. We have a medicine in fasting that is highly successful, but there is no return on investment. And that explains why, although some research is being done at the moment on fasting, we don't hear nearly enough because it's free. There's no side effects if you do it correctly. It's something most people can do to some degree, and it can lead to tremendous health benefits, but there's no money behind it. So we're going to look at the science, but understand, well, if there's not more research on it, although there is a lot being done, and we want more to be done, we know why. In an article published in Science Daily that quoted the American Heart Association, a study was done on members of a religious practice called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who they practice fasting. And the researchers noticed that people who fast seem to receive a heart protective benefit. In this study, going back, fasting was the strongest predictor of lower heart disease risk in the people we surveyed. So you can get some of the same benefits as you would get from a healthy diet through fasting. In an article published in a Telegraph, which quoted the same study by Dr. Longo, it was said that fasting for as little as 3 days can regenerate the entire immune system, even in the elderly. And this is what interests me as well. Scientists have found a breakthrough described as remarkable, but we've known it for a long time. Let's take a look at how we get fuel, how the human body functions. So we can get fuel on a daily basis under normal circumstances, eating from the glucose we get in our food and our immediate reserves in our liver and our muscles, the glycogen in our muscles. We eat, we break down some of this food into glucose, and our body and our brain uses the glucose. But there's another way we can get fuel. We can break down muscle tissue, but also fat in our food, but muscle tissue especially, into glucose through a process called gluconeogenesis, the creation of new glucose, typically from muscle tissue. This is not something we want a lot of, as we will see. Ketosis is a different state. Ketosis is a state where our body can run, our brain can run on ketone bodies, which is an alternate source of fuel produced from the breakdown of stored fat, our own body fat or the fat in our food, but typically our own body fat. So this is how the human body gets its primary fuel. And let's go back to ketosis. Ketosis is a state, we need to understand these terms, is a state where your energy supply comes from ketone bodies. So you break down your own body fat instead of using glucose from your food. Gluconeogenesis is the synthesis of new glucose molecules from non-carbohydrate sources, such as amino acids, read protein. And there's an entire process behind that. Why is this important to know? Because we need to understand what the difference is in fasting between fasting and starvation. And to understand that, we're going to look at monkeys, or typically the great apes, chimpanzees. This is not something that is talked about very often, but there is a huge difference between human beings and apes. And there are a number of differences, obviously, even though we're very similar on a genetic level. One of the biggest differences is that the chimpanzee brain cannot use ketone bodies for energy. It must get glucose, and it will break down muscle to survive through gluconeogenesis. The human brain can use glucose and ketone bodies. This is a very unique feature of the human being, which means that the human body can conserve muscle mass during fasting. A chimpanzee will die of starvation shortly after initiating a fast. A human being, under normal circumstances, can fast at least 40 to 60 days without even entering a true starvation phase. So what are some of the differences between fasting and starving? It's very simple. When you burn primarily your muscle tissue for energy, you are starving. When you're burning primarily your fat reserves, you are fasting. So fasting is not something that happens instantly. It's a process that goes through several phases. And as long as we don't fast past our reserves or in poor conditions, we don't enter the starvation phase. This is not to say that it's safe to fast for a long time on your own. This is not what I'm saying, but this is a generalization about the human being in general and how we are able to fast and what is the difference between fasting and starving. So until we reach that phase, we're not starving. Why? Because our body will do everything it can to conserve energy and conserve nutrients and spare its muscle tissues, spare its protein. Why fasting again? It leads to a number of benefits based on the type of fasting that you do. But if we look at fasting in general, one of the benefits of fasting is a process called autophagy. I don't know how to pronounce this, but it's the process of the body consuming its own tissues that will eat itself, or in a sense, the body goes through a series of priorities. First, it will use up the immediate reserves of glucose, etc. It will break down a little bit of muscle tissue, but shift as soon as possible to ketose metabolism. And in the process, it will scour the body for energy and to get rid of tissues that are no longer needed. It could be cancer cells, it could be all viruses, all kinds of things you don't want in your body. It will get rid of a lot of stuff during fasting because of this process of finding a source of nourishment. There are anti-inflammatory effects to fasting that are very profound, and also detoxifying effects without overusing the word, but the body will get rid of toxins, stored toxins, actually. Blood flow increases, arteries will tend to dilate, blood pressure will drop over time as you water fast. We're talking about a water fast here. And the blood sugar will drop, of course, and this leads to the insulin receptors to recalibrate, to become more sensitive to insulin. Because of all of those changes that occur during fasting, fasting can help a number of health conditions. May help. I'm not going to promise that they will, and no fasting professional would, but this is from observations of thousands and thousands of people fasting that these conditions tend to get better. Autoimmune diseases, osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis, cardiovascular disease, headaches, chronic pain, insomnia, hypertension, chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety, skin disorders, ulcers, type 2 diabetes. And it may help in preventing cancer. We don't know about reversing it yet. There's not enough research behind it, but it's possible that it may help prevent cancer, maybe slow down its progression. Now, this is for long-term fasting or fasting going through the process that I described. But if we look at a more approachable form of fasting, which would be intermittent fasting, this can also lead to a number of health benefits: weight and fat loss, recalibration of taste buds so that healthy foods will taste better without so much fat, so much salt, so many additives, enhanced mood, you feel better, your energy increases, your body is able to process the nutrition that you're giving it, mental clarity increases, and you may prevent disease and find long-term benefits. So what are the types of fast that you can do? We've looked at long-term fasting, but there's also another type of fast that you can do, is a caloric restriction or juice fast. So there are a number of juice fasting programs that are popular, but a true juice fast is a fast that would restrict your caloric intake in a significant way, because otherwise it's not really a fast. If you're consuming 2,000 calories a day on a normal basis, and then you shift to 2,000 calories worth of juice, you're not really fasting. You're just consuming liquid nutrition, which has some benefits, but it's not fasting. If you're cutting down your caloric intake by 50%, the body does produce some of the effects of fasting in that state. It's more accessible and it offers some health benefits as well. Intermittent fasting is also relatively easy to incorporate into your life, and it has many health benefits, and this is the practice of short, regular periods of fasting. Then we have what we would call a short fast, 24 to 72 hours, maybe up to 4 or 5 days in some people, where you would only drink water typically, and it can be very beneficial, and it offers deeper cleansing and other benefits that you wouldn't get via the other methods of fasting. And as we go past 72 hours, we start to enter ketone metabolism. So your body really shifts to that ketosis mode, and it becomes a different game entirely. It's more intense. This is a true fast, and in most cases, it should be supervised. A short fast may be approachable to many people. That may mean a 36-hour fast, because during a 24 to 36-hour fast, ketosis is generally not initiated unless you're very active, you're young, and you burn through a lot of calories. Then you may start to go through ketosis. But for most people, you will still be burning your immediate reserves of glycogen and energy. As you get into 48 hours, the body starts to shift into ketosis. As you get to 72 hours, in most cases, it will be full-on ketosis. And then you start entering a deep phase of the fast after 4 or 5 days. In terms of intermittent fasting, you can adopt a number of strategies to incorporate fasting into your life. One of the easiest ones to incorporate, not necessarily on a daily basis, but it could be a few times a week or daily, is the no breakfast or 16-8 diet, where you only eat in a predetermined period of time, which is going to be typically shorter than the normal eating hours. So let's say you go to bed at 8 and you get up at 8. You stop eating at 8, you go to bed at whatever time, and you start eating the next day at 8 a.m. That would be a 12 hours. So you're eating for 12 hours and you're not eating you're fasting, so to speak, for 12 hours. If you increase that period of fasting time, that becomes a form of intermittent fasting, because you're going from eating for 12 hours a day to eating for only 8 or 10 or 6, however you want to restrict it. And this has many benefits, a big one being it helps in losing body fat. Another form of intermittent fasting would be to do a 24-hour fast once or twice a week. So you would stop eating at 8 p.m. and resume the next day at 8 p.m. or find some other way. You stop eating at 8 a.m. and you start the next day at 8 a.m. It depends on, there are many possibilities. And this also has many fat loss benefits, but also research is showing that it has some disease prevention benefits as well. And when you get into a modified version of that, you have something called the 5-2 diet, where for 2 days a week, you have a modified fast. So a diet of only 400 to 500 calories on those days. So let's say Monday and Thursday would be fasting days. And on those days, you would only consume 400 or 500 calories. It's a diet that's been coined. There's a book out there with that name, and it works. Some research has been done to show that it works. It's a modified fasting regimen, and it has similar benefits to the 24-hour fast. So what happens during a fast? Yes, the body starts to rest and conserve energy, but also a process of repair and healing takes place. And many of those processes are not yet fully understood. We don't know exactly why certain health conditions tend to get better during a fast. Not enough research has been done on it. It would be very interesting to find out, but we know something takes place. And in my perspective, this comes from our evolution, because fasting is a type of stress, and the body responds to it in a positive way if it's done correctly, like exercise. Exercise is a type of stress on the body, and the body responds by saying, look, this stress might come again, I better get stronger. And the same happens during a fast. And this could explain many of the anti-inflammatory effects observed during a fast and the improvement in immune function. The body responds to this stress by getting stronger. Now, one common question that we get is, what about dry fasting? Fasting without water. And I know the Muslim religion recommends dry fasting. and during the Ramadan, and many people believe in dry fasting. And believers in dry fasting, not from a religious perspective, but from a health perspective, believe that there's more detoxification that takes place during a dry fast. However, this is the principle of dilution. It's only because toxins are not diluted with water that they appear to be more concentrated. So it's not beneficial for health reasons to dry fast for a long period of time. You can dry fast for half a day, maybe up to a full day, but you're not necessarily getting benefits. But once you go past a day, it's really essential to drink water. And again, there are no additional benefits to dry fasting. It's only harmful to your health. So we're gonna ask you at this point in the webinar, what is your experience with fasting? So just a quick moment before we load this. All right, we're not gonna load this just a second. We just wanted to test this new feature and ask you about your experience during a fast. So you can just text us your responses for now. Have you ever fasted? Do you have a story to tell about fasting? Is there a story you want to share about fasting? Just write us a quick response right now, and we'll get to it at the end if we can. So now we're getting to the part where I'm going to discuss how to fast on your own, because this was the title of the webinar. And this is where we wanted to get to eventually. Now, like I said, fasting is not for everybody, but most people can fast a couple of days on their own, 1 to 3 days, but make sure to consult your physician first. Up to 5 days is possible, but only for those with experience in fasting. You've done water fasting before. You're not on any medication that you can't discontinue during a fast. And many methods of fasting can bring benefits. It doesn't have to be a water fast. You can do a modified fast by adding juice to your fast, adding extra calories so you don't enter into a ketosis mode or anything close to it. How do you fast? Let's say you want to try a short water fast. You would start at dinner time with lots of high fiber, high water foods, salads, vegetables, whole grains, fruit. One thing I did mention so far is that during a fast, you can run into trouble if you don't prepare well enough for that fast. And the longer your fast is going to be, the more preparation it requires. This is critical. This is probably one of the most important things about fasting. But since we're not talking about doing a long fast on your own, I did not bring this up. But let's say you're going to do a longer fast or even a short fast. The better you prepare, in other words, the better you eat before your fast, the easier your fast is going to be and the less trouble you'll get at the end of the fast. So we have loaded the poll, and you can answer about your experience during the fast, and we'll get to it at the end. Thank you so much. So you start with a light dinner, lots of high water food, salads, vegetables, and so on, and you then start fasting and you consume water during your fast, or you do a modified fast and you add some juice. You can start fasting in the evening. This is what works for most people. Some people do it in a different way, but in the vast majority of cases, it works better to do it that way. So you start, let's say, at 7 p.m., and I'm going to say, and this is not something you'll hear from many of the natural hygienists, but if you regularly drink tea or coffee and you attempt a short fast, you will get caffeine withdrawal headaches. And if you don't want that, you can still get many of the benefits of fasting and keep drinking some tea or caffeine or any of the beverage that you're eating. As long as it doesn't contain many calories, you're still getting many of the benefits. But I do find that it's worth cutting down on caffeine during your fasting day. If you're fasting 1 day a week, this might be a good day to consume less caffeine. Doesn't mean cut down completely, but you can consume less. So if you've never fasted a full day and your health allows it, let me run through some of the symptoms or the feelings that I've noticed through many years of regularly fasting for 24 hours on a regular basis. So this is what I've noticed. This might not be the same for you, but I've noticed this, and I've talked to a lot of people who have been doing fasting, and the experience tends to be similar. So first you go to bed, 7 to 11 p.m. You go to bed, you finish dinner early, and the only thing to know there is you need to resist temptation. Don't snack. Just go have that few hours. So you go to bed, maybe not on an empty stomach, but not on a full stomach either. It's been a few hours since you finished your meal. You're not digesting too much during the night. In other words, don't have a big meal and then go to bed. Then you're sleeping, so that part is easy. You already do it every night, so it's easy and natural. The first part of the fast is just skipping breakfast. And most people find that their stomach may rumble. At first, your body is used to getting food at a certain time. So if you have breakfast every day, you skip it, it will let you know. But most people find that they're surprisingly not hungry if they skip breakfast. Once they get past that first hour where they normally have breakfast, suddenly they feel like, hey, you know what? I'm not hungry. Then somewhere between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., the hunger kicks in. You feel like, it might be nice to eat, but it just gets stronger, and that's natural. You feel the hunger building up. And this is important, somewhere in the afternoon between 2 and 5 p.m., this is our circadian rhythms. This is when our energy naturally drops, our body gets cooler. So this is when you get tired. During a fast, you'll feel, especially the first few times you do a short fast, you'll feel tired during that period of time, somewhere in the afternoon. Maybe some detox, maybe some headaches, maybe some low energy. You want to rest. But if you get past that, there's that energy that comes back, I call it the high, like my fast is kicking in, I feel good. So once I get past the hump of the afternoon hump, I feel good. Energy comes back, mood lifts. This is what the moment you've been waiting for, the moment you've been waiting to experience, that fasting can feel good. It can feel better than eating once you get to that period here. And then you break the fast. Or if you decide to continue till the next day, not on your first time, but next time you want to try it, it is just a matter of resisting temptation. It's just a mental game. Okay, go to bed hungry. And I've noticed that sleep is deeper. In some people it is lighter, but in me, my sleep is deeper when I fast on an empty stomach, and my dreams are different. And when I get up the next day, it's a great experience to eat. Every time I do it, it's the same. So this is kind of to show you what might happen if you decide to fast for 24 hours, up to 36 hours, if your health allows it. But there are some things to avoid. You want to avoid strenuous physical activity. So don't fast on your workout day at the gym. Fast on your resting day if you decide to fast. You can stay busy. This is we're not talking about a long period of time, but don't spend too much energy. Okay, so some people find it's better to fast on a Monday because they're busy and they're not thinking about it. Personally, I like it better to fast on a Sunday because I'm resting that day. And I find that it prepares me for the next week. I sleep better on Sunday night. It just starts off the week in a good way. But everybody is different. Avoid dry fasting. Don't force too much water down either. Drink normally, follow your thirst. And avoid supplements on an empty stomach. So if you're normally consuming supplements in the morning, wait until the evening when you start eating again to consume them. This is an avoid here, don't discontinue your medication without doctor's advice. One day of fasting generally is not enough to affect most medication use, but be sure to consult your doctor on that. How do you break a short fast? And by the way, everything that I said applies to a modified fast as well. So if you're going to do a juice fast, have your juice during the day, but you start the same way. You don't spend too much energy. If you normally drink caffeine and you want to avoid the headache, you can keep drinking a little bit, the same thing. After a 24-hour fast, it's not necessary to break the fast in any special way. You don't need to break it with juice or anything. You can break it with high water content foods, ideally like fruits and salads. But you eat normally, and this is the key. It's not about catching up. You know, eating quickly, getting down as much food as possible. You want to feel good during the fast. So to stretch the benefits of a fast, you break the fast with a cleansing meal, or I don't like that word, but with a super healthy meal that's high in water and high in raw foods and vegetables. If you extend the fast for 36 hours, it only means skipping dinner on your fasting day and going to bed hungry. And like I said, once you get after the afternoon hum, fasting an entire day is not that difficult. And it may lead to more profound results, but go with your own experiment on that. And you break it the same way, sorry. We're coming up with a product on fasting that I've been working on for so long. I'm very excited about this. This is our biggest product that's coming up this year. It's called The Greatest Cure on Earth. And I like this quote from Dr. John Tilden, who was one of the pioneers of fasting, who said that, "I must say in all seriousness that fasting, when combined with a properly selected diet, is the nearest approach to a cure-all that is possible to conceive, profoundly simple and simply profound." So this product will give you all the details on fasting, every type of fast, juice, water, intermittent, short, long, how to conduct a fast in details, what to expect from a fast, how fasting can help with a range of health conditions, and how to get the most from any fast. So stay tuned for this breakthrough product. Now we're going to take about 10 or 15 minutes to answer some questions. And I want to say that we'll try to answer as many questions as possible, but if this is about a specific condition to see if fasting can help, I think I've given you the overall information. If it's going to be safe or beneficial for your situation, I will say talk to a physician and your physician, but also a physician with experience in fasting, such as the great folks at the True North Health Center. So we're gonna get started now with some questions. Sarah, what do we have?
I'm coming back.
All right. Thank
Okay.
you for monitoring everything and getting the questions.
Yeah. So, okay. So first of all, Gabor asks, how does mindset play a part in how you are going to do during a fast? And he specifically had a question that had to do with maybe believing that you're starving. If you don't know that you can go 30 days without food, will you feel like you are starving during the fast? Or what does mindset play in it?
Yes, that's a very good question. Well, most people, it's often said, if you read some of the books on fasting, it's often said that no one should fast if they're afraid of fasting. That's one of the reasons why you should not fast. If you're afraid of fasting, don't fast. So that's one thing to say, but what I'll add to this is, yes, mindset is a big thing. So if you fasted, whether it's a juice fast or any type of fast, if you fast one day, you know you can do it. You know, you have that experience. And then, like, I fasted many times, and I know I'm not expecting anything from the fast that I don't know. I know if I fast for a longer period, and I don't do this on my own, 5 days or longer, I go to True North or a place like that, and I don't do this on a regular basis. I do this maybe every 2 or 3 years. If I do a longer fast, I know I'm getting in that fasting territory. I know what my body can do. So that's why it's very important to read a lot about fasting, and that's why we're putting this book together. So anybody considering fasting who you want to read a lot about fasting, about what truly happens during a fast, understand the symptoms that could come up, why they come up, It's invaluable. Every time that I fasted, I needed to have those books as reinforcement to understand what I was going through, in addition to, of course, being around people that are very experienced in fasting. For a short fast, I've given you some of the basics. When you try it on your own, if it makes sense for you to try it, I think it will become its own positive reinforcement.
Okay. Then Frank mentioned during the poll time that he thinks juicing or juice fasting is a little bit better because you're consuming minerals that your body still needs. And maybe you could just talk a little bit about the difference between juice fasting and water fasting.
Can you repeat the part about the minerals?
He likes juice fasting more because you are still consuming minerals that you need versus...
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to talk about juice fasting versus water fasting in the context of a short fast. So if you're fasting 1 or 2 days or 3 days, the advantage of juice fasting is you're consuming some of the calories, so it's not going to be as intense, although a short fast is typically not very intense. So I know some people like to fast for 24 hours or a full day on juices, and personally, I find that fasting is easier. Water fasting is easier than juice fasting because I'm still entertaining my hunger when I drink the juice, and when I don't, it's easier in the sense because there's nothing to do. There's no preparation. You don't need to get the juice. You don't need to juice it yourself or buy it. You don't need to think about drinking it. You just need to go through your day and drink water. So that's one of the advantages in the context of a short fast. And the minerals you don't need additional minerals in 1 day of fasting, and as you fast a longer period of time, it becomes a different story. But the difference is more about the calories that you're consuming. So some people choose to do a modified fast where they drink only green juices with very few calories in them, and that becomes, I don't know if it's easier. I don't know if it's easier on the body. I know Gabriel Cousins does that at his fasting retreat. So you get very few calories, maybe 400 calories in a day. And so it's a true fast. You enter in a sort of fasting state, but you're getting some nutrition from the greens, some vitamins, some minerals. So possibly it could be helpful for a longer period. But I do think that you would not see some of the benefits that you get through water-only fasting because you're never entering a full ketosis state. We're talking about a longer fast, which is a little bit trickier. But to answer the question fully, it really depends. I think it's more about giving your body some calories, whether that's important to you, than having vitamins and minerals for a couple days. Just wanted to, do we have the results of the poll? All right, so we have an interesting 70% of people have tried a 24-hour fast already. 30% have never tried. 30% have never tried a water fast. 87% of people watching this webinar have tried a juice fast, and 13% have never tried. So we're talking to a very experienced audience right now. And that's great. So we can go into even more details about some of the science and the benefits of fasting. So, Sarah, do we have another question?
Yes. Okay. From Diane, she's asking, do the fasting days have to be back to back? Can you do 24 hours on a Tuesday and 24 hours on a Thursday?
Tuesday and Thursday. Well, it's good if you have a little bit of space between your fasting days. So I would say it might be better to give yourself 2 days between the fasts. But that's just from my personal experience. Once I've done a fast, it's not a marathon. The idea is not to get in as many fasts as you can during a week. I personally, 1 day a week is more than enough. And in fact, I did a 7-day water fast in February, something which I hadn't done in a number of years. And I haven't fasted a single day since that fast. And I'm going to start again shortly, but you don't. Once you've done some fasting, it's not about doing more and always doing more. But before I did the 7-day fast, I went through a period of maybe 3 or 4 months where every single week I was fasting for 36 hours, and I found many benefits in that. And that point for me is to reintroduce the 24-hour weekly fast, not 36, but 24. So fasting is, you want to be flexible when you fast. You don't want to say, every Monday I'm fasting no matter what. Yes, you can try it for a while, but it's, listen to your body. Does it make sense for you to keep doing it? Maybe not. Maybe you're training hard, you need to eat more, so, you know, trust yourself. Don't follow a schedule.
Okay, then we've got Renee, and she's asking, does your program talk about skin brushing, massage, colonics, or sunshine as a part of the fast?
Yes, yes. The books, in fact, the program contains 4 books that are, and 2 of them have never been available in English before. And we also have, we will have a 2-hour video or a audio presentation with Dr. Goldhammer from the True North Center, and we'll have more videos on fasting, which will cover a lot of these topics. So there are different philosophies, and I'm not going to get into this today. Some sunshine is good during a fast. Some of these other interventions like colonics and so on, there are different opinions on this. Some people believe that they're necessary. Some people believe that they're harmful, and some people believe that they're sometimes possibly beneficial, but in most cases they're not. We belong to that last school. So yes, in some cases, some of those interventions during a fast are necessary, but in the vast majority of cases, they're very counterproductive. They waste your energy. Fasting is about resting. It's not about doing a lot of stuff. It's not about quantifying everything. It's about resting. It's all about resting. So, but we will cover all of those topics.
All right, then Karen mentioned that she adds a little sea salt to the water when she's doing a water fast in order to still have some minerals. What do you think about that?
When you add sea salt to your water, you're getting 95% sodium chloride. Essentially, the other minerals are negligible. So there's no reason to add sea salt to your water to get those minerals like magnesium and other minerals you would need. You're still digesting your food. Your body is not going to run out of minerals. It's recycling its own minerals. The only thing that drinking salt does is it causes you to retain more water, and which has the opposite effects that you want from a fast. You want your body to flush down the excess sodium from. That's one of the beneficial effects of a fast, is you flush down some of the retained salt. That's why skin looks better after a fast, because the body starts to lose this intracellular sodium, too much sodium all over the place. Retain water to dilute that sodium down. So there's no positive reasons to continue consuming salt. Your body is already shifting its way of retaining salt and its sodium-potassium balance as soon as you start fasting. So it's going to start, because you're giving it less sodium, it's going to start retaining more of its own sodium after flushing the excess down, which takes many days, and it's not going to happen in 24 hours anyway.
All right, so right in that same vein, we've got Daphne and some other people supporting this question of talk about what type of water is best to have during a fast.
I'm drinking some water, so any clean water. Many fasting centers will use distilled water because it's the most pure type of water, and there are some schools of thought that distilled water is something you should avoid because it leaches minerals out of the body, but no, it doesn't do that. If you have access to distilled water, you're going to be fine, and in fact it's used in most fasting centers. I don't use distilled water. I have a really good water filter, and I use that, but you could use reverse osmosis water. You could use good quality bottled water in glass bottles. Any clean source of water that you know is free of chemicals Uh, Everything that you would find that you don't want to have in the water supply has been taken out of it or filtered out. The rest is up to you if you prefer a type of filtered water versus another.
Okay, then a couple of people, including Sonia and Gabor, have mentioned different types of pains or ailments or feeling ill during a fast, and then if they stop fasting, these things will go away. Can you talk a little bit about what people might experience during the fast that way?
Yes, I'm not going to get too much into it because my understanding, myself, Frederick Batnot, as a person who's researched fasting but has not supervised people, but knows and is in contact with physicians that do supervise fasting. So this is the information based, in that context, that if you fast for a longer period of time, something happens to many people where they experience pains. And I don't know why. Is it the nervous system? I have no idea, and I don't think anybody does. And it hasn't always happened to me. In the last fast that I did, it did happen to me on the last days of my fast, on day 6 and day 7. And we're talking about a water fast, a longer water fast. So I was in deep ketosis, and I started experiencing all kinds of aches and pains. Everywhere where I had hurt myself in the past, let's say I had a bicycle accident 10 years ago, a pretty bad one, where I messed up my knee. And sometimes on a rainy day, on a damp day, I feel those scar tissues. And during the fast, I felt it badly. I felt like to the point where it was difficult to sleep. And I felt dental repairs. It seems the body has a memory of the pains, and it may come back during a fast. But that being said, as soon as I started eating, it went away, and I felt better than ever after the fast. And it actually eased up a lot of those aches and pains, which, now that I think of it, the knee pain would come on an occasional basis before the fast, and I haven't felt it since. So I don't know, but something happens during a long fast, and I think overall it's beneficial. It can be challenging at times. You don't know if it's going to happen to you. That's why you don't fast for an extended period of time on your own. So we have 8 more minutes to take a few more questions.
Okay, we have a couple more. Doug is asking about the length of fasting, because he gets to a stage in the fast where it feels really good and he's no longer hungry. And so once you reach that stage, how then do you know how long to keep fasting for, or when to stop, and that sort of thing?
Well, because you're at a fasting center, and they're going to tell you that going back to don't fast too long on your own. It sounds like you're attempting a long fast on your own, which you shouldn't do, right? So that kind of answers the question. But that being said, in The Greatest Cure on Earth, the books and everything, we do talk about exactly what happens during a long fast. How can you tell if you're ready to stop your fast, if you can benefit from fasting more? So that will answer the question, but I would say this type of reasoning doesn't apply to the type of fast we're talking about today, which is a shorter period of fasting you would do on your own.
All right, and then Larry asked, what do you think about lemonade or lemonade cleanse or fast?
Like the Master Cleanse, there are many types of cleansing programs where it's a modified fasting regimen. It's very similar to a juice fast. So I believe the Master Cleanse consists of lemon juice, maple syrup, and cayenne pepper. Now, I will say that all of those things have no benefits whatsoever. The cayenne pepper, they have some benefits, but it's mostly in your mind. So you have the cayenne, and your nose is runnier because it's reacting to the cayenne. No, I'm not saying cayenne is bad for you, but it doesn't help you detox necessarily during a fast. I think it's more of a gimmick than anything else. Same with the lemon juice. I feel it's just too much acidity to have during a fast on day after day, to have so much lemon juice. And maple syrup is just, well, it's refined sugar, which is okay if you do a fasting regimen, but it's better to have juice. It's better to have juice because you have more nutrients in the juice. If you're doing a modified fast and you're adding some juice to your fast, have juice. Don't have maple syrup, because in the juice you will get the vitamins, minerals. You will get a more balanced package. Does that make sense?
I think so. Okay. And then Sonia asked, she said she was on a water cleanse. She got a little bit nervous about not consuming anything, and so she started adding coconut water in with the spring water she was consuming. What do you think about that?
Yes, again, it's a similar approach where you're doing a modified fast. So you are consuming coconut water, and that's a few calories, a few hundred calories. And in a very hot climate, it might be useful. Not talking about a long fast, but let's say you're fasting for a couple of days, a day or two. It might be useful to have the coconut water for the electrolytes and so on. But again, it's a modified type of fast, so you're adding a few extra calories. You're adding some minerals to your fast in the natural way, which is very good. So I would say it's a good thing. Yes.
All right. Nora just asked, what about the pH of water? Is it important to pay attention to the pH of the water you're consuming?
It's not essential to pay attention to the pH of the water. If you have a really good water filter, like the water filter that I have made by Aqua Ovo is a filter that tends to create a more balanced type of water, not too acidic, not too alkaline. But it's not essential to. At fasting centers they have neutral water. They don't add any minerals to make it more alkaline, for example.
Okay, and then the last question, Christine had asked, when will your fasting program be available? And that is our last question.
Oh yes, well, it will be available next month. We've been working hard. Sarah's been working hard. Jeff has been working hard on this. We're putting together this package. And what's difficult is we have to translate a lot of material. We have 2 completely original books. There's going to be the conference with Dr. Goldhammer. There's going to be more video material, and we're reprinting 2 classics on fasting, including one by Dr. Herbert Shelton in a new edition. So it's a big package, and I would say about 4 weeks at this point before we're ready to release it. So thank you, Sarah, for helping me with the webinar today, and I think it's a better formula than we had last week. And we have another webinar coming up next week, and the topic will be the salt. Not next week, in 2 weeks. Sorry. The topic will be the salt controversy. So stay tuned for that. And thank you so much for being here today, and thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.